David Sterling adjusted his designer tie for the third time as the elevator climbed toward the penthouse. The mirror in the luxury lift reflected a man who had seemingly put his life back together after a messy divorce 6 months ago, at 35. His dark hair was perfectly styled. His tailored navy suit fit him like a glove. His green eyes held the confidence of someone who had rebuilt himself from the ground up. Standing beside him, Natasha Cole looked absolutely stunning in her emerald dress that complemented her auburn hair and brought out her warm brown eyes. "You seem nervous," Natasha whispered, her voice carrying a slight concern as she smoothed down her dress. Her 20-year-old face radiated youth and beauty, and David often marveled at how lucky he felt to have found her after his world had crumbled. "Not nervous," David replied, though his jaw tensed slightly. "Just want tonight to go smoothly. This party is important for my career." The elevator dinged softly. The doors slid open to reveal the magnificent rooftop terrace of Richard Hayes' Manhattan penthouse. The space was transformed into an elegant paradise with twinkling lights strung overhead, exotic flowers arranged in crystal vases, and the glittering city skyline serving as a breathtaking backdrop. The gentle hum of conversation mixed with soft jazz music created an atmosphere of sophisticated luxury. The hosts welcomed Richard Hayes, a distinguished man in his mid-40s with silver-streaked hair and an expensive suit, approached them immediately. His reputation as a real estate mogul preceded him. David knew that securing his account could elevate his architectural firm to new heights. "David Sterling," Richard boomed with genuine warmth, extending his hand.
"I'm so glad you could make
it, and this must be the lovely Natasha I've heard so much about." Natasha blushed slightly as Richard kissed her hand in an old-fashioned gesture. "Thank you for including me, Mr. Hayes. Your penthouse is absolutely breathtaking. Please call me Richard. And I must say, David, you have exquisite taste," Richard said with a knowing wink. "Let me introduce you to some people who could be very beneficial for your business." As they moved through the crowd, David felt his confidence growing. Several influential clients expressed interest in his work. Natasha charmed everyone she met with her genuine warmth and intelligence. For the first time in months, David felt like his life was truly moving in the right direction. The unexpected guest the party was in full swing when a subtle shift occurred in the atmosphere. Conversations seemed to pause momentarily, and David noticed several heads turning toward the elevator entrance. He followed their gaze and felt his breath catch in his throat. Sophia Sterling emerged from the elevator like a vision from a dream. His ex-wife had always been beautiful, but tonight she was absolutely radiant. Her platinum blonde hair cascaded in perfect waves over her shoulders, and her figure-hugging black dress accentuated every curve of her body. At 33, she had somehow become even more stunning than when they were married. Her blue eyes sparkled with a confidence that David had never seen before, and her smile could have lit up the entire Manhattan skyline. "Oh, to David," Natasha whispered, urgently tugging on his arm. "Who is that woman?" Everyone's staring at her. David's mouth went dry as he watched Sophia glide through the crowd with the grace of a queen. "That's Sophia," he managed to whisper back. "My ex-wife." The transformation, what struck David most, was not just how beautiful Sophia looked, but how completely different she seemed. During their marriage, she had been somewhat reserved, often overshadowed by his ambitious personality. "Now," she commanded, attention effortlessly. Moving through the party with an aura of success and self-assurance that was magnetic, Sophia was no longer the quiet, fashion design student he had married. She had clearly transformed herself into something extraordinary, and David found himself unable to look away. Her dress was clearly designer, her jewelry was understated but expensive, and everything about her screamed success and sophistication. "She's gorgeous," Natasha said quietly, and David detected a note of insecurity in her voice that made his heart ache. "No wonder you married her. We're different people now." The recognition as if sensing his gaze, Sophia turned and locked eyes with David across the crowded terrace. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. The sounds of the party faded into background noise, and David felt transported back to the first time he had seen her at a college art exhibition. The same electric connection that had drawn them together all those years ago seemed to spark between them once. Again, Sophia's lips curved into a subtle smile. She raised her champagne glass in a small salute before turning her attention back to the group of admirers surrounding her. The gesture was elegant and confident, nothing like the uncertain woman who had signed their divorce papers 6 months ago. "David, you're staring," Natasha said, her voice now carrying a sharp edge. That snapped him back to reality. "Sorry," he mumbled, forcing himself to focus on his girlfriend. "I was just surprised to see her here. I had no idea she would be at this party." The business connection Richard Hayes appeared at their side, his eyes bright with excitement. "David, I see you've noticed our guest of honor. Sophia Sterling is absolutely remarkable. Her fashion design company has taken New York by storm in the past few months. We're actually discussing a collaboration for my new hotel project." David felt his stomach drop. "Sophia is working with you?" "Oh yes," Richard continued enthusiastically. "She's designing the entire interior aesthetic for my new luxury resort in the Hamptons. Brilliant mind for business, that one. I'm surprised you two haven't crossed paths in the industry." Natasha looked between David and Richard with growing concern. "They're divorced," she said quietly. Richard's face flushed with embarrassment. "Oh my goodness, I had no idea. How terribly awkward of me. Please forgive the misunderstanding." "Fine," David said through gritted teeth, though he felt anything but fine. Learning that Sophia was not only successful, but working with potential clients was like a punch to the gut. The growing tension as the evening progressed. David found himself increasingly distracted. He tried to focus on his conversations with potential clients, but his eyes kept drifting to Sophia. She seemed to effortlessly command the attention of everyone around her, and he could hear her musical laughter floating across the terrace. Natasha, meanwhile, grew quieter and more withdrawn. She had noticed David's distraction and was clearly uncomfortable with the situation. When he suggested they get some fresh air at the far end of the terrace, she readily agreed. "This is harder than I expected," David admitted, as they stood by the railing, looking out over the city lights. "Seeing her again?" Natasha asked softly. "Seeing her like this," David clarified. "She's completely different from the woman I divorced. It's more confident, more successful." He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "More beautiful," Natasha supplied, her voice barely audible. David turned to face her, seeing the pain in her eyes. "Natasha, you're beautiful. It's not what this is about." "Then what is it about?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. The memories surfaced before David could answer. Memories of his marriage to Sophia came flooding back. He remembered how passionate they had been in the beginning, how they had dreamed of building an empire. Together, she would design beautiful spaces, and he would construct magnificent buildings. They were going to conquer the world as a team. But somewhere along the way, things had gone wrong. David had become consumed with his career, working longer hours and traveling more frequently. Sophia had grown distant, feeling neglected and unappreciated. Their conversations became arguments. Their passion turned to resentment. And eventually, they barely spoke at all. The divorce had been David's idea. He had convinced himself that they had grown apart, that they wanted different things from life. Sophia had fought for their marriage at first, begging him to try couples therapy too. Take a vacation together, to remember what they once had. But David had been stubborn, certain that ending things was the right choice. Now, seeing her transformed into this confident, successful woman, he wondered if he had made the biggest mistake of his life. They approached David Sterling, a familiar voice said behind them. David turned to find Sophia approaching, her smile warm but cautious. Up close, she was even more stunning, and David caught a hint of her signature perfume that brought back a flood of intimate memories. "Sophia," he managed, his voice rougher than he intended. "You look incredible." "Thank you," she replied gracefully. "You look well too." "And you must be Natasha," she added, turning to David's girlfriend with genuine warmth. "I've heard lovely things about you." Natasha straightened her shoulders, clearly trying to match Sophia's confidence. "Thank you." "Yes. Told me about you as well. All good things, I hope." Sophia said with a laugh that David remembered all too well. The three of them stood in an awkward triangle, the tension palpable in the evening air. David could feel the weight of unspoken words and unresolved emotions, hanging between them like a storm cloud ready to burst. Before the awkward conversation could continue, a tall, distinguished man approached their group. At 38, he had the refined elegance of old money combined, with the sharp intelligence of a self-made millionaire. His dark hair was peppered with silver at the temples, and his piercing gray eyes seemed to take in everything around him. "Sophia, darling," Benjamin said smoothly, placing a possessive hand on the small of her back. "I see you found some old friends." David felt a surge of jealousy so intense it surprised him. Casual intimacy between Sophia and this stranger hit him like a physical blow. "Benjamin, I'd like you to meet David Sterling, my former husband," Sophia said with remarkable composure. "And this is Natasha Cole, David's girlfriend." Benjamin extended his hand to David with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "The famous architect. Sophia has told me so much about you." "Has she?" David replied tightly, shaking Benjamin's hand with perhaps more force than necessary. "What exactly do you do, Benjamin?" "Investment banking, acquisitions, a little bit of everything, really," Benjamin replied casually. The business success Natasha cleared her throat delicately. "Sophia, we heard about your fashion company from Richard. It sounds like you're doing incredibly well." Sophia's face lit up with genuine pride. "Thank you. It's been an amazing journey. When David and I divorced, I decided to take all that pain and channel it into something productive. Sterling Designs has grown beyond my wildest dreams." David winced at the mention of their divorce being fuel for her success. "I'm glad you found your direction," he said stiffly. "Oh, I found much more than direction," Sophia replied, her blue eyes sparkling with something David couldn't quite identify. "I found myself. Turns out I was capable of things I never imagined when I was trying to be the perfect wife." The words stung, and David felt Natasha shift uncomfortably beside him. Benjamin squeezed Sophia's waist gently, a gesture of support. That made David's jaw clench involuntarily. The old friend's arrival, well, a familiar voice interrupted. "If it isn't the power couple reunion of the century." Rachel Stevens approached with a glass of wine in hand and mischief dancing in her green eyes. At 42, Rachel was a successful art gallery owner who had been friends with both David and Sophia throughout their marriage. Her red hair was styled in an elegant updo, and her black cocktail dress was both sophisticated and slightly provocative. "Right. Rachel," Sophia said warmly, embracing her old friend. "I was hoping you'd be here tonight. Wouldn't miss it for the world," Rachel replied, her gaze moving between David, Sophia, and their respective companions, especially when I heard through the grapevine that both Sterling spouses would be attending. David felt heat creep up his neck. "Besides, I have a vested interest in seeing how this all plays out." The revelation begins. Benjamin excused himself to take a business call, giving David an opportunity he hadn't expected. Natasha was drawn into conversation with another guest, leaving David alone with Sophia and Rachel for the first time since the divorce. "You look good, David," Sophia said quietly, her earlier confidence softening slightly, genuinely happy. "I am happy," David replied, though the words felt hollow even as he spoke them. "Natasha is wonderful. She's everything I thought you wanted," Rachel interjected with raised eyebrows. Tense, having some issues. David shot her a warning look. "My relationship with Natasha is solid, is it?" Sophia asked gently. "Because from where I'm standing, you look like a man who's questioning everything." The painful truth, the three of them moved to a quieter corner of the terrace, away from the main party. The city lights twinkled below them like fallen stars, creating an intimate atmosphere that brought back memories of countless evenings they had shared together. "I need to know something," David said suddenly, his voice thick with emotion. "When did you become this person? This confident, successful woman who has everything figured out?" Sophia was quiet for a long moment, swirling the champagne in her glass. "About 3 months after you left," she said finally. "I woke up one morning and realized I had spent 5 years of my life trying to be someone I thought you wanted me. To be quiet, supportive, always in the background while you chased your dreams." "That's not fair," David protested. "I never asked you to be anything other than yourself, didn't you?" Sophia challenged, her blue eyes flashing. Suggested we start our own design firm together. You said it was too risky. Every time I wanted to pursue a big client, you worried it would take time away from our marriage. You loved the idea of me, David, but you were terrified of who I actually was. Rachel nodded sagely. She's right, you know. I watched it happen. You both did. The emotional breakdown, David felt like the ground was shifting beneath his feet. If that's how you felt, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't we talk about it? I tried, Sophia said, her voice breaking slightly. For months before you asked for the divorce, I tried to tell you I was unhappy. You were so busy with your projects, your clients, your success. You had already checked out of our marriage long before you made it official. The accusation hit David like a physical blow because he knew it was true. He remembered those final months, how he had thrown himself into work to avoid dealing with the growing distance between them. He had convinced himself that Sophia was just going through a phase, that she would eventually settle back into the comfortable routine they had established. I was scared, David admitted quietly. Scared that if you became too successful, you wouldn't need me anymore. So instead, you made sure I didn't have the chance to find out, Sophia replied sadly. You ended things before we could discover what we might have become together. The competition intensifies. Natasha appeared at David's side, her face carefully composed, but her eyes betraying her anxiety. I hate to interrupt, but Richard is looking for you, David. Something about the Hamilton project? David nodded, grateful for the distraction. Of course. As David walked away, Natasha remained behind with Sophia and Rachel. Two women studied each other carefully, like generals sizing up their opposition. He's different. With you, Sophia observed, her tone neutral, but her eyes studying Natasha intently. Different how? It suits him, Sophia replied diplomatically. Rachel smirked. What Sophia is too polite to say is that you're safe. You don't challenge him, or push him to be better than he is. Natasha's cheeks flushed. That's not true. I support David's ambitions completely. Support and inspire are two different things, Sophia said gently. David and I inspired each other to dream bigger, to take risks, to be more than we were apart. It was terrifying and exhilarating and ultimately destructive because we were both too young to handle that kind of intensity. The business revelation Benjamin returned from his phone call with a triumphant expression. Excellent news, darling. Tokyo deal went through. Sterling Designs just became an international brand. Sophia's face lit up with genuine joy, and she threw her arms around Benjamin's neck. The display of affection was so natural and uninhibited that it made Natasha's heart sink. Tokyo? Rachel asked with genuine excitement. Sophia, that's incredible. Inhumans. Connections open doors I never could have imagined, Sophia explained, her eyes shining with happiness. We're designing the interiors for a chain of luxury hotels across Asia. David returned just in time to hear this announcement, and the expression on his face was priceless. His ex-wife had not only recovered from their divorce, but had built an international empire in the process. Congratulations, David said stiffly. That's quite an achievement. If we hadn't divorced, I never would have had the courage to take such big risks. The group fell into an uncomfortable silence. Their divorce hadn't just freed her from an unhappy marriage. Gosh, it had unleashed a version of herself that was more successful and fulfilled than she had ever been with David. Natasha slipped her hand into David's, seeking reassurance. We should probably mingle more, she suggested hopefully. There are still people you wanted to meet. Sophia, Benjamin, it was good seeing you both. Likewise, Benjamin replied. Smoothly. David, if you're ever interested in expanding your architectural practice internationally, I'd be happy to discuss some opportunities with you. The offer was clearly meant to be generous, but David heard it as condescension. The idea of accepting help from his ex-wife's boyfriend was almost unbearable. I'll keep that in mind, David replied tersely. The private moment as the evening progressed, David found himself on the observation deck alone, needing space to process everything that had happened. The city sprawled out below him, millions of lights representing millions of lives, millions of choices, millions of what-ifs. Hiding out here. Sophia's voice came from behind him. David turned to find her standing in the doorway. Having shed her confident party demeanor for something more vulnerable, just needed some air. Me too, she admitted, joining him at the railing. This is harder than I expected, seeing me again. Seeing you with her, Sophia said honestly. Natasha seems lovely. She clearly adores you, but, David prompted, sensing there was more. But she's not your equal, Sophia said gently. She worships you instead of challenging you. You're going to get bored, David, just like you got restless with me when I was trying to be the perfect wife. David wanted to deny it, but the words wouldn't come.
Oh.
Deep down, he knew Sophia was right. His relationship with Natasha was comfortable and uncomplicated, but it lacked the fire and passion that had once existed between him and Sophia. What do you want me to say? David asked quietly. Nothing, Sophia replied. I just want you to be honest with yourself about what you really want. She turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I hope you find happiness, David. Real happiness. Not just the absence of conflict. As she walked away, David remained at the railing, staring out at the city and wondering if he had just let the love of his life slip away for the second time. James Parker had been watching the drama unfold from across the terrace all evening. As David's best friend since college and the best man at his wedding to Sophia, James knew both of them better than they knew themselves. At 36, James was a successful corporate lawyer with sharp instincts and an even sharper tongue. When the situation called for it. You look like someone just told you that your life's work was built on quicksand, James said, approaching David at the railing with 2 glasses of whiskey. Maybe it was, David replied, accepting the drink gratefully. James, I think I made the biggest mistake of my life. Divorcing Sophia, James asked bluntly. Yeah, I could have told you that 6 months ago. In fact, I did tell you that 6 months ago. David downed half his whiskey in one gulp. You saw her tonight. She's incredible. Successful, confident, happy. Everything I always knew she could be. And now you want her back because she's successful? James challenged. That's pretty shallow, even for you. It's not about the success, David protested. It's about seeing who she really is, when she's not trying to fit into the box I created. For her, I fell in love with her potential, James, but I was too scared to let her reach it.
Oh.
The shocking truth, James was quiet for a moment, swirling his whiskey.
Oh.
There's something you need to know. Something I probably should have told you. Months ago? What? David asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to hear the answer. The night before you filed for divorce, Sophia came to see me, James said carefully. She was desperate, David. She begged me to talk to you, to convince you to try therapy, to give your marriage one more chance. David felt the blood drain from his face. Why didn't you tell me? Because you had already made up your mind, James replied. You were so convinced that ending things was the right choice. You wouldn't have listened. But David, she was willing to fight for your marriage right up until the very end. The revelation hit David like a punch to the gut. All this time, he had told himself that their divorce was mutual, that they had both realized they wanted different things. Learning that Sophia had been fighting for them while he was planning their exit felt like a betrayal of everything he thought he knew about their relationship. The business partner's arrival before David could fully process this information, a stunning Latina woman in her early 30s, approached them. Alina Rodriguez was Sophia's business partner and closest friend, and her arrival at the party had been carefully timed. David Sterling, Alina said with a warm smile that didn't quite reach her dark eyes. I've heard so much about you, Alina. Rodriguez, David replied, recognizing her from the business journals. Sophia's partner in Sterling Designs. Among other things, Alina replied cryptically. I was hoping I might have a word with you privately. James excused himself diplomatically, leaving David alone with Alina. She was beautiful in a completely different way from both Sophia and Natasha, with an exotic elegance and an aura of barely contained power. I have a proposition for you, Alina said without preamble, something that could benefit both you and Sophia. The proposition Alina led David to a quiet corner of the terrace where they could speak without being overheard. Sterling Designs is expanding into architectural consulting, she explained. We want to offer our clients complete design packages, everything from building design to interior decoration. That sounds like a smart business move, David replied cautiously. It is, Elena agreed. And we want you to head up our architectural division. David nearly choked on his whiskey. You want me to work for Sophia? Was Sophia, Elena corrected. As an equal partner? The firm would become Sterling and Sterling Designs. You'd have complete creative control over the architectural projects, and Sophia would handle the interior design. Together, you'd be unstoppable. The offer was everything David had ever wanted professionally, but the personal implications were staggering. Elena, I'm flattered, but I can't work with my ex-wife. It would be too complicated, would it? Elena challenged. Or are you just afraid that working together again might remind you both of what you lost? The confession David was struggling to formulate a response when Natasha appeared at his side, clearly having been looking for him. Her face was flushed, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. David, we need to talk, she said urgently. Barely. Acknowledging Elena's presence, Elena excused herself gracefully, leaving David and Natasha alone. The younger woman was clearly distraught, her earlier composure completely shattered. I can't do this anymore, Natasha said, her voice breaking. I can see the way you look at her, David. I can see how you light up when she speaks, how you hang. On her every word, you're in love with her, Natasha. That's not true, David protested weakly. Though even as he said the words, he knew they were lies. Yes, it is, Natasha replied sadly. But you know what the worst part is? I can't even hate her for it. She's everything I wish I could be. Confident, successful, challenging. She pushes you to be better, and I just make you comfortable. David wanted to comfort her, to tell her she was wrong, but the words wouldn't come. Natasha was right, and Natasha was right, and they both knew it. I love you, Natasha continued, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. But I love you enough to let you go. You'll never be truly happy with me as long as she exists in the world, and I refuse to spend my life competing. With a ghost? The heartbreaking goodbye with that, Natasha removed the promise ring David had given her and placed it gently in his palm. I hope you find what you're looking for, she whispered, then walked away before David could respond. David stood there, holding the ring, feeling like the worst person in the world. Natasha deserved so much better than a man who couldn't give her his whole heart. She deserved someone who would love her completely, without reservation or comparison. As he watched her disappear into the crowd, David realized that this was the pattern of his life. He hurt the people who loved him because he was too afraid to be vulnerable, too scared to take risks, too comfortable with safe choices that ultimately left everyone unsatisfied. The final confrontation. David found Sophia on the far side of the terrace, standing alone and looking out over the city. Benjamin was nowhere to be seen, and for the first time all evening, she looked vulnerable. Where's your boyfriend? David asked, joining her at the railing. He's not my boyfriend, Sophia replied quietly. He's my business partner and a dear friend, but there's nothing romantic between us. David felt a surge of hope so intense it took his breath away. But the way he touched you, the way you looked at him, Benjamin, is gay, David, Sophia said with a small smile. He's been with his partner Marcus for 8 years. The affection you saw was purely platonic. David felt foolish for his jealousy, but also relieved beyond measure. Why didn't you correct the assumption? Because I wanted to see if it mattered to you, Sophia admitted. I needed to know if seeing me with someone else would make you realize what you had given up. The truth revealed, David turned to face her fully. Seeing past the confident facade to the woman he had fallen in love with all those years ago, Sophia, I need to tell you something. James told me about the night before I filed for divorce, about how you came to see him. Sophia's face paled slightly. I asked him not to tell you that. Why? David asked desperately. Why didn't you fight? Harder? Why didn't you come to me directly? Because you had already made up your mind, Sophia replied, her voice thick with emotion. And because I knew that if I begged you to stay, you might have agreed out of guilt rather than love. I wanted you to want me, David, not to stay with me out of obligation. I did want you, David said fiercely. I wanted you so much, it terrified me. You were so talented, so full of potential. I was afraid that if you became everything you were capable of becoming, you'd realize you were too good for me. The apology Sophia's eyes filled with tears. So instead, you made sure I never got the chance to outgrow you. I was an idiot, David said, his own voice breaking. I was so focused on protecting myself that I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me. Can you ever forgive me? There's nothing to forgive, Sophia replied softly. We were both young and scared and dealing with things we didn't understand. But David, I need you to know that leaving you was the hardest thing I've ever done. But it was also the best thing that ever happened to me, because it made you successful, because it made me realize that I didn't need you to be complete. Sophia said gently, and that's important, because love shouldn't be about need. It should be about choice. The moment of truth, David reached out and took Sophia's hands, marveling at how perfectly they still fit in his. What if I chose you now? What if I chose us? Are you sure? Sophia asked, searching his eyes. Because I'm not the same woman you married, David. I'm stronger now, more independent. I have opinions and ambitions, and I'm not going to shrink myself to make anyone else comfortable. I don't want you to shrink, David replied earnestly. I want to see you shine. I want to be the man who supports your dreams instead of the one who holds them back. Sophia studied his face for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether he was sincere. Finally, she smiled, and it was like the sun coming out after a long storm. Alina made you an offer tonight, didn't she? Sophia asked. How did you know? 'Cause it was my idea, Sophia admitted. I've been hoping for months that you'd be ready. To take that kind of risk with me? The new beginning, David pulled Sophia closer, his heart racing with possibilities. What would it mean? Us working together again? It would mean being partners in every sense of the word, Sophia replied. Equal partners in business and in life, if that's what we both want. Is it what you want? David asked, hardly daring. To hope I want the chance to find out what we could become together, Sophia said honestly. No guarantees, no promises we might not be able to keep. Just the opportunity to see if we've both grown enough to make this work. David leaned down and kissed her softly, tasting the future on her lips. It was a kiss full of promise and possibility, of second chances and new beginnings. The resolution 6 months later. David and Sophia stood in the lobby of their first collaborative project. It's a stunning residential complex that perfectly blended David's architectural vision with Sophia's interior design genius. Sterling & Sterling Designs had become one of the most sought-after firms in the city, and their personal relationship had grown stronger with each project they completed together. Any regrets? Sophia asked, slipping her hand into David's as they surveyed their work. Only that it took us so long to get here, David replied, bringing her hand to his lips. But maybe we needed to lose each other to really appreciate what we had and what we could have, Sophia added. Leaning into his embrace, they had learned that love wasn't about finding someone who completed you, but about choosing to grow together, to challenge each other, and to build something beautiful. From the ashes of what came before, their second chance at love was built on a foundation of mutual respect, shared ambition, and the hard-won wisdom that came from nearly losing everything. As they walked out of the building together, hand in hand, David realized that sometimes the best love stories weren't about finding the perfect person, but about becoming the person worthy of a perfect love. And as Sophia squeezed his hand and smiled up at him, he knew that their greatest adventure was just beginning. The perfect ending. The evening sun cast a golden glow over the city as David and Sophia drove home to the life they had built together. Their wedding rings caught the light, symbols not just of their renewed commitment, but of their shared belief that love, like great architecture, required both a strong foundation and the courage to keep building. No matter how many times you had to start over, their story had come full circle, but this time they were writing it together.